Hey everybody, Dr. Chris, orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine physician. And today, I'm gonna talk about student loans after medical school. How I was $500,000 in debt. Yes, that's correct. I said $500,000.
Oh, what'd you say?
People wanna know, how did I actually manage to accrue $500,000 in debt? Like, what was I doing?
$1,000 chain, $5 t-shirts, $20 jeans, $20,000 grill.
Oh, hell no!
My journey through medical school was not exactly direct, and nor was it short. I always knew that I wanted to go to medical school, but I also had other goals in mind, one of which was to play competitive football. So I played at the college level or at the university level if you're from Canada. And when I did that, my focus was primarily on football because at that time I had hoped to be able to play professional football before I went to medical school. I really wasn't studying as much as I should have, and my marks were not as great as what I would have liked when I was done my degree. At the end of my 4-year degree, that left me with marks that were not acceptable to get me into medical school. So I had had student loans all throughout my undergraduate career. Then I had to go do something else to boost my marks and make me more of a competitive applicant. I did a 2-year master's program in biochemistry, and during that time I did have a stipend that I was paid, and I also did get some scholarships. But during my undergraduate, I had my first child, and then during my graduate degree, I had another 2 children. My wife was also a student, she wasn't working at the time. We were accumulating more debt than we were bringing in terms of scholarship or bursary money. The first time that I applied to medical school, my marks still weren't strong enough, so I had applied to Teachers College as backup, and when I went to Teachers College, obviously I had to pay for that as well, so I accumulated even more debt in that year. And then I applied to medical school following Teachers College, at which point I got in. So I had applied twice, I got in on the second time. Then I went to medical school for 4 years. Obviously during those 4 years, I was unable to work, and I had to take out some student loans. And fortunately, in Canada, if you have entered into a professional program and the bank is confident that you are going to be able to pay back the loans afterwards, then you can get loans from the bank. During the first half of my academic career, the loans that I got were from the government. During my medical training, the loans that I had were from the bank directly. All of those loans got me to the end of medical school, at which point I am actually a doctor. To be honest, my debt didn't just stop there, because I continued to accumulate debt after that when I did my postgraduate training, as I'm trying to live on my relatively small resident salary, and then trying to support a family of 5. So when all is said and done, it took me about 16 or 17 years to be fully trained.
What?
About 16 or 17 years to be fully trained.
Okay.
And I accumulated that debt, $500,000, over that entire duration of time. So some of you might want to know more specifically if I actually made money while I was in school. During medical school, I didn't make any money. I paid for my tuition, and I borrowed money from the bank to pay for all of my living expenses. However, during residency, we actually do get paid. So you get a stipend that is paid by whatever university or hospital that you are receiving your training from. You usually get a stipend from them. So you're actually paid as a physician to work there. In my particular case, as an R1, I believe I started at $39,000. So that's Canadian dollars. Each year, it went up by approximately $3,000, such that at the end, I was making about 54,000 Canadian dollars. I was a fully licensed physician, but not fully trained orthopedic surgeon. Most people these days do not go out and practice after that. They usually go to do at least one, and these days, some of these guys now are doing 3 fellowships. So usually each fellowship is an additional 1 year of training, but it is of subspecialty. My fellowship stipend was approximately the same amount as what I made in my R5 year of residency, so about $4,000. And by the end of my fellowship year, I had accumulated a debt of $500,000, $500,000.
We need justice!
Some people want to know, well, is the amount of debt that I had typical, more than, or less than the average person who goes through medical training? These days, people who have to cover the cost of medical school themselves, pay for it themselves, typically come out with several $100,000 worth of debt. $500,000 is just a little bit over the top. And if you just kind of do some quick math in your head, if I think about medical school alone, the tuition was on average $18,000 to $20,000 per year. Over 4 years, that's about $80,000. And then, of course, living expenses anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 a year. So right there, medical school alone, if you're paying for it on your own, we're talking $160,000 to $180,000 right there. And that's not including anything else, postgraduate training or anything, any debt that you may have had prior to entering medical school. One of the key questions then is, was I worried about money? To tell you the truth, I was really worried about money. But only for a certain period of time, because once you go below a certain point, it's kind of like being a doctor and seeing some gruesome stuff. In the end, you just kind of have to let it go, because if you don't, it's going to consume you. And you have to just not be worried about it. Likelihood of you being able to pay off the debt, whatever it is probably pretty good. There were a few times I stayed up at night wondering how I was going to pay for everything and how I was going to get through. But
turns out it's genetic. Doesn't matter whether you exercise or what you eat.
You really can't spend too much time worrying about where the money is coming from, because there is so much other information that you got to pack into your head that there really isn't any space for you to be thinking about where the money is coming from. So there's a lot of people who would want to do it, but then they would say, I'm not going to do it because the debt is going to be monumental. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pay back my loans afterwards. There is a certain element of risk taking. This is risk taking behavior. However, if you are truly determined to make this happen, you will figure it out. There was so many times where I didn't have the money, didn't know where it was going to come from. What am I going to do? And every single time that I thought that, the money came from somewhere. The hardest part about deciding to be a physician is exactly that, deciding to be a physician. If you've made that decision and you have truly committed to that decision, then everything else will fall into place, because you will do what's necessary. You will find a way to make it happen, and you'll find a way to get the money. I've told you guys how much money I owed at the end. When I finally got out, I kind of scrounged around for a little bit, and ultimately I ended up doing some surgical assist work and then also doing some locums. If you don't know, a locum is when a physician at some hospital, someplace, wants to go on vacation and they don't have anybody to cover, they'll hire a locum. So I'll show up and I will live there in that community for 2 weeks or 1 week or however long that person is gone for, and I will cover their orthopedic practice while they're away. I also maintain a pretty frugal standard of living. I lived in a small condo with my wife and my 3 kids. My boys shared a bedroom almost until the time they were finished high school. And I saved as much money as I could so that I could pay back those loans as quickly as possible. You don't always have to know where you'll get the money from, but quite frequently the money will find itself to you if you are really looking for it. So whether that's through scholarships at your school, stipends at the school, loans from the government or loans from the bank, if worst comes to worst, you could always join the military. As I said, there was a few people in my class that were trained through the military. I joined the military after. If I was smart, I would have done it beforehand so that they had paid my debts, but I ended up joining the military after I finished. So there are ways to get the money to make it through. Don't let the money be the thing that stops you. Press on ahead, you'll figure it out somehow. So that's it. Today we've been talking about student loans after medical school, how I owed $500 million. But did I mention I don't owe that anymore? If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can be notified when we post new content. If you are a returning member of the intern army, be sure to hit the like button and share this with a friend. And you might want to check out the merch shelf down below because we now have bone sucking rotation tees for sale. You, of course, picked out the winning design. So go cop it while it's hot. And as always, that's been a word from Dr. Chris, not your everyday Ortho.